Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining. So if you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please just type them into the questions box on your screen, and we'll be sure to get those answered by the end. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Gerry Brien.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon, our P3 webinar on the most important safety documentation for Connecticut marketers. It's really not just for Connecticut marketers, it's really for any marketers out there. So joining us today, my colleague Alex Burns, she's the Vice President of P3 Propane Safety. Also joining us as a guest today is Patrick Donahue. He's the Regional Risk Safety Manager for Federated for the Northeast market. Federated has been a longtime partner of ours. We go back to the Tank Shore days. I go back to working with these folks for almost 25 years. I think it started with Leslie Consig, an old Federated friend. Yeah, so we really enjoy our partnership with these guys. They have a really do understand the market. They're extremely knowledgeable, and so before I do pass this on, I do want to thank the folks at the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association for sponsoring this webinar. With that being said, I will turn it over to Alex Burns.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Gerry. Appreciate it. And thank you, Patrick, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So I think just for what we were kind of thinking about doing today is we're lucky to have Patrick joining us here from Federated. And I think what we wanted to do was just kind of really pose the question to Patrick so he could kind of give us an opportunity here to discuss really kind of what the question I'd like to ask is really, what are some of your top concerns from a propane safety perspective when you're, looking at working with a propane company? So what are some of the kind of the hot button issues for you guys? And then maybe we could just kind of go from there. But I think just sort of starting with that question, I think would be a good place to start. And then Emma too, if you want to hand the screen share over to me so that if Patrick's got anything he's talking about, I can kind of jump in and show in real time what we're working on here.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys very much for having me. We appreciate SEMA a lot, and the P3 partnership has been phenomenal. When it comes to propane companies, I mean, we always suggest that they complete a safety inspection that's detailed. I mean, sort of the big 4 items absolutely is starting with the pressure test. What is the duration of time and at what pressure did it hold? Documenting the appliances that were connected to the system, as well as is the venting of the appliances safe? And then completing just a verification that if there's any unused, uncapped lines, that they are properly capped off. Those are kind of the big 4. And I think it's twofold. I mean, one is if you're really systematic with completing a safety inspection with that big 4, the pressure check, types of appliances, venting of appliances, and a check for making sure there's no unused, uncapped lines, it's going to greatly reduce the chance of a propane incident. I think that's number 1. And there's also the element, of course, in 2025, goodness, it's become such a litigious world. So being able to say, if you ever have to pull records under litigation or discovery, what did you do at this property? Having that big 4 is really going to help you from a potential litigation standpoint compared to, I've seen it in my 21 years with Federated. If a company is deposed with regard to one of their installations, if they have a comprehensive safety inspection form, that looks much better for them compared to if they only have one that's partially completed.
Okay, great. So what I've got pulled up on the screen here, just as an example of some of the things that you just spoke about, Patrick, is obviously collecting that appliance related information, as well as we do ask the venting system question here, just making sure everything is okay, as well as I know this gas lines capped was not, when we kind of very first early days of P3 started developing our documentation and really trying to come out with industry best documentation and real best practice. One of the things is we worked with Federated really early on as we were developing P3 to make sure that this gas lines capped question is being asked on the safety inspection and documented with every single safety inspection. So that goes, you know, back 10, 12 years ago when we very first started doing what we're doing, and we were working with Federated, and that was a real priority. So I think that's something important to note, and we know that it is, you know, a real priority for you guys. But this as well, obviously leak and pressure information on here. But I do think just noting that capped gas lines question was something that we specifically did as a recommendation from you guys. And so anyway, that's just what I was sharing there. So I think that's great. And, you know, we think, and I, you know you guys have agreed in the past that this is a solid document that takes care of all those things.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we appreciate you adding that. The unused uncapped, the reason that we added it to our form, it was probably going back 9 or 10 years ago. We just had multiple cases of litigation with insureds where, yes, they had done the check for unused uncapped lines, but it was not on the form. And opposing counsel was like, well, if you didn't document it, you did it write it down. Did it really happen? Do I hate that that's the world that we're in 2025? Absolutely. But we're definitely in a world where unless you document it through P3 or in writing each and every time, there's going to be questions. God forbid something happens.
Yep, certainly. Yep. So I guess, yeah, just from your perspective, Patrick, just some, you know, whatever you kind of, any other priorities that you think would be good to share with folks here today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, I consider, you know, doing paper, you know, gas checks versus P3. I think the challenge has been when we have clients of Federated where they're doing the paper gas checks, the verification that the form is being completed accurately and comprehensively is very time intensive. I mean, it almost comes down to having an administrative person in the office that would check every single form that comes in. What I love about P3 and greatly appreciate is as the technician or the driver is going through the safety inspection, it's almost monitoring kind of in the background where they almost can't even close out that safety inspection form until they've completed each of the items. So I think big picture, you know, it helps to ensure a more quality inspection. And from a liability perspective, each and every form that goes into P3, you have assurance as a business owner that it's going to be complete. So I really like that a lot, because if a company is just doing the paper gas checks, part of our review as we sit down and we consult with propane companies, we'll look at some of their safety inspection forms. Almost always we'll pull 20 or 25 forms. There will be 5, 6 forms that are pulled that are partially complete. Maybe they missed the venting of the appliances, or they didn't put the time held for the pressure check. Having that verification from P3 is awesome.
That's great. Well, just as you were talking, I was thinking, what would be a good thing to kind of pull up to be an example of what you're talking about? So what I was going to show on the screen for folks watching is, this is, you know, if you're entering, this is towards the end of a safety inspection. If you're entering your leak check data, I'm just going to put in some information here, and then just kind of show you a little bit about. Okay, so I've entered start pressure, end pressure, and a start time, end time, and I'm going to continue. And the system is going to basically just warn me that I've entered non-compliant documentation. It's going to tell me that it's incomplete because there's a pressure change. I started with a pressure of 9 and ended with a pressure of 8. So that's an incorrect test procedure. And then as well as I only held it for 1 minute. So what it's going to do is it's going to warn you as the user in the field, hey, you're entering bad documentation. We're not going to require you to change it because there may be times you want to document a bad leak check. You may be, tagging a system out of service and you want to show that it wouldn't hold the pressure. So we don't want to create pencil whipping, but we also want to say, hey, just in case you fat fingered it or just, didn't realize that, that you'd put in the wrong time, it gives those folks, the drivers and the technicians in the field, that kind of heads up of, hey, let's check this and make sure that this looks good. The other thing that P3 does outside of just the error recognition is if you're answering a section, whether it's the appliance related information, whatever information about regulators, if you don't fill that section out completely, it will also give you a quick warning saying, hey, this is incomplete. Are you sure you want to move forward? So really, I mean, exactly to your point, Patrick, what it does is it just creates more complete documentation, because anytime somebody tries to save something that's not complete, they're going to get a warning saying, hey, this isn't completely done. And then it gives you the opportunity to go back and say, oh, I didn't even realize I had skipped that field. So I think we, which is a major difference between working with old paper documentation and using some sort of electronic documentation like P3. So just to
100%.
back up what you just said. Yeah.
It's something else, thinking about propane incidents that we've had in my time with Federated. Oftentimes, it's related to a regulator failure. And as we dig in and have conversations with propane companies, a lot of regulators, be it a Fisher or a Rego, I mean, they have a life of usually around 25 years, sometimes a little more, sometimes less. The question is, how are you going to know when a regulator is going to come due? If you're using the paper forms, you're almost forced to keep your own separate spreadsheet. And if you don't have a spreadsheet on your own now, then you'd almost have to go back through all your old paper forms and enter it. Very labor intensive. I contrast that to with P3, from the beginning, entering the regulator date, when it's going to come due to change it out, and then you get an automated prompt. So it takes away a lot of that sweat equity to figure out, okay, whose home is it going to be? I mean, I've chatted with propane companies over the years where they share, well, each time a delivery is made, the regulator date is checked. I'm like, really? A second stage regulator, somebody crawling underneath the decking to verify the date in the middle of a New England winter? Oh, I don't think so. So I love P3's ability just to give you a pop-up reminder to say, okay, Mrs. Jones, time to change out her regulator, and away you go.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that we work on that. And I think kind of like exactly what you were saying is, just for those folks on the webinar, if you're unfamiliar with P3, what I'm showing now is the P3 dashboard, which is what you see when you log into the system. This is the first thing you see every time. So we're going to put right here on your dashboard, first thing you see every morning when you log in is all of your regulators that are either expired or set to expire in the coming 6 months. You can get right in here, exactly what's going on. You can see, this one's set to expire a little bit later this year. These ones all have already expired at an earlier date this year, but you've got that, you've got that list right in front of you, very clear, exactly what needs to be replaced. So you have that, maybe this is a good time. So, now that we're to your point, the New England winter is over, wherever you are, maybe you've got some time now over the course of the summer to get out and get after these, but it just catalogs these really easily, very quickly for you. The other thing we do, which hopefully can help, from time to time in keeping this list smaller from the beginning, another thing that we do, because like Patrick mentioned, Rego's got a 25-year service life, right? That's what, so if we basically this is now I've transitioned over to the mobile application. So what this is going to show is that if I'm entering, you know, I'm out of the house, I'm doing an inspection, I've entered this regulator. It's going to, if it is a regulator that has already expired or is set to expire in the next calendar year, it's going to give the technician or the driver a warning saying basically, you're about to save a regulator that is expired or is going to expire soon. Are you sure you want to continue? So maybe if somebody's unaware service lives of these regulators, which we have them all built into P3, we have all that logic. So without even having to know that information, as a person standing there, the system is going to tell you, hey, you know, this is about to expire. This might be a good time since you're already on site to just swap this thing out. So we're trying to head it off on the front end as much as we can. No, that's not always possible to get that solved at that point in time, but we're giving the opportunity so that it then doesn't even end up on the dashboard, you know, immediately as soon as you get home or within the next year. So that's a couple of ways that we're kind of trying to, you know, create some efficiency in terms of tracking regulators, you know, not only, you know, just heading it off at the beginning and then reporting it back as well. So those are a couple of things that P3 is doing to address the things that you're talking about, Patrick.
For sure. I guess something else that every propane company that is in the market deals with is you set a tank, you're good to go with sources of ignition, building openings, and away you go. You're monitoring degree days, their usage based on what's connected appliance wise. And then you come back to do the fill, and you told them not to put a air conditioner in the window right above the tank, you know, during the summer, yet that's exactly what they've done. So I like the P3 opportunity where pictures in the file, you can upload them and share, here's how we left this tank after an installation. Having those pictures is really powerful. In the event that something happens, you can show exactly how you left the tank the date of the install, compared to if you don't have that picture available readily, it's much harder from a defense standpoint if there is an incident.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just pulled up an example. It's kind of a little bit backwards to what you just described, but the picture that I'm showing is a good example of this is something that, because one of the things when companies start working with us, we recommend that at the time of each tank set, you're doing a safety inspection, you take pictures of the tank set that you set that day, so you know exactly what it looked like on that day when you left, so that if something changes, like a window AC, whatever, some sort of environmental change. And then this is a good example of an environmental change as well that I have on the screen. You've got somebody who's stacked, you know, a dozen sheets of plywood and some tarps up against a couple of tanks. So this is something that was reported by a driver. You know, they go out, they make a delivery, they're able to just real quickly through our site conditions reporting say, hey, like I found this when I was on, you know, on site today. And then we're able to really follow that through the process, you know, address it with the homeowner, make sure that they remove the whatever, you know, environmental change that they made. And then again, driver goes back out next time, can confirm very quickly that in fact they did remove the plywood and the tarps and whatever else was all surrounding the containers. And now you can see here that everything's been cleaned out. So you're able to track all of that through your P3 dashboard and able to really show, hey, the last time we were on site, this is what things looked like, or, you know, at the time the tank set, this is how we left it. If anything changed after that, we know exactly what it was on that date. So yeah, a lot of tracking of those sort of things through P3 as well.
Yeah, just incredibly powerful and efficient and simple how you can do that on your platform. I guess the only other thing I'd share is kind of a big picture item, is just the importance of duty to warn. First of all, getting it out to all your new customers, but then annually thereafter, you know, getting it in their hands, documenting that you provided it. We've seen a lot of circumstances over the years where, let's say, duty to warn was provided at the first install, but not thereafter. 4 or 5 years go by, and if I were to ask each of you on the line, if you were delivered information 4 or 5 years ago is it at the top of your mind? And of course, the answer would be emphatically no. So I like that P3 has the offering to provide duty to warn information, to track when it was sent out to your customers, to say, hey, at this particular customer, I mean, we did everything we possibly could to warn them about the potential dangers of propane right at the beginning when we first set up the install, annually thereafter. I mean, taking that step proactively, goodness, I mean, it really helps to reduce the chance of an incident. And if one occurs, you can say with a lot of confidence, listen, we did everything we possibly could to avoid this scenario.
And that's one of the things that we have a couple ways to collect duty to warn in P3. We have just a standalone initial duty to warn form if somebody's talking through with the homeowner, maybe going through the some of the perk documents, the scratch and sniff, that sort of thing. You can collect that all through mobile, as well as really, this is that same safety inspection form that we looked at kind of on the front end here. This is the bottom section of this form here. It's just sort of, it is all these exact same questions that are asked here. It's just in a little bit of a smaller format. So, and this is now anytime you've gone out and you're doing a safety inspection at that homeowner's home, you're getting them to review those statements and sign off on the fact that they've been given this information. They've been told what propane smells like. If you've given them any of the brochures or anything, you can check off all of that, right there. So that's happening sort of organically every time that you're doing a safety inspection through P3 Mobile. And then we also understand, depending on your company policy, sometimes a customer may not be home at the time that you're completing a safety inspection. And if that's the case, you are then not receiving a signature on that document. So this is another thing that we keep right here on the dashboard. Again, when you log in, this is going to tell you if you have any customers that have had a safety inspection completed, but they haven't signed off on that initial duty to warn information. They weren't there, so you didn't grab a signature. So we're going to keep those flagged for you as well, so that you can make sure to understand that you want to go and grab a signature from that customer at some point. That's just, again, another thing that we're trying to keep sort of tracked in front of everybody. So
Yeah, that is awesome.
yeah, great. Yeah, so try to keep it simple, make it easy for everybody. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we wanted to talk about, or just see maybe if we have any questions first.
Sure.
Maybe that would be a good time. I don't know, Emma, if you saw any questions pop up.
Yep, it does look on. So does P3 require a Wi-Fi connection out in the field?
No, you can use P3 online or offline. So doesn't really matter. We just, obviously recommend that you log in the morning with a good connection to make sure that you get any updates to the customer list or any updates that we've made to the system. But once you've logged into the system, you can go work offline all day long if you want. And then as soon as you come back to a connection, whether just like a better service area or come back to Wi-Fi, you can just connect back to P3, and all of that information will just upload to the system for you. Yep. Was there anything else, Emma, or is that?
Yeah, that looks like it was the only kind of question that popped up.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I think with that, I don't know, Gerry, if you had anything that you wanted to.
No, I think I want to thank Patrick again for joining us. It was great to hear kind of your perspective. Yeah, we really appreciate and value the partnership that we have in place with you folks. And again, really want to thank you for your time today.
Oh, for sure. Well, thank you for having me. It was a great conversation. Just a back and forth. I mean, I am a very big believer in P3 because I think it keeps things simple. I mean, I've seen it for years and years and years, propane companies where they're tracking things on their own. They're trying to handle thousands of pieces of paper. And as you grow your propane business, the elephant in the room with your paper just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just becomes costly, if you're trying to pull information and get into your customer base, to rifle through all that paper is just, is problematic, and I think it costs a lot of time and money. So P3 makes it simple and efficient. So I'm a huge believer in the platform.
Thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you for that, Patrick.
Yeah, no problem.
So I guess with that being said, well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Again, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Alex. And if you ever have any questions on P3 or Federated, you guys know where to find us. So thank you all and have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.